Chapter 2, Where to Start with Research. The motivation to conduct research usually begins with a natural curiosity about the world. Why do we do the things that we do? And how can we measure the things we do to create meaning or benefit our lives and the lives of others? It all starts with a research question, which is a description of the broad topic of study in question form. It should be something that is specific and it should be something that is measurable. So something like, what are the best parenting practices, is too broad and tends to be rather opinion-based. Instead, if you were to do a study, a better question might be, to what extent does a family-based exercise intervention increase subjective well-being in adolescents? While both are getting at similar ideas, one question is testable while the other is not. We then create a hypothesis. The hypothesis is a statement of the way in which variables are expected to be related. It is what you are expecting to happen. So taking our example, you might predict that compared to baseline, which is before anything happens, a 6-week family exercise intervention will significantly improve adolescent subjective well-being. We have taken that research question and turned it into a statement. That statement is specific, it's falsifiable, which means that we can prove it false or find evidence against it, and it is testable. And the hypothesis does need to come before that test, just as a side note. Then we have predictions, which is a statement of the expected outcome of a research investigation. In my research and training, hypotheses should be specific enough that they are essentially synonymous with your prediction. This image is just an additional resource for you with the definitions for research question, hypothesis, and prediction, examples for each of those terms, and then it shows you on the far right that it starts off general and then goes down to be more specific. There are 5 main sources for research ideas. First is common sense, just testing a common sense idea. It could be testing anecdotes, things like, do opposites attract? Does going outside with wet hair increase your chance of illness? Testing some things that people just talk about. We can also have practical problems, which goes hand in hand with common sense because these are things we encounter every day. For example, what are some ways we can improve math scores on the SAT? What are some ways to reduce vaping in college students? These are problems in day-to-day life that we want to find a solution for. We can also rely on observation of the world around us, which ties back to both common sense and practical problems. Maybe you have a long commute and you just keep seeing people with road rage out and about. Maybe observing this leads to a research question about why people engage in road rage, and that can lead to future research opportunities. Many research questions, especially in the behavioral sciences, stem from theories. And when we are talking about theories, we are talking about a systematic, coherent, and logical set of ideas about a particular topic or phenomenon that serves to organize and explain data and generate new knowledge. So this is different than how we use the word theory in everyday life. It's not just a synonym for having an idea, but rather organization of existing data to make sense of the research that's already been done. Theories can be modified over time, but it's not nearly as fleeting as you would think with how we talk about it in everyday life. And lastly, we have past research. Past research is a great starting point for so many questions because nearly every study will bring up new questions. If we find that teens are more likely than any age group to use their phones while driving, maybe we want to know what they're doing on their phones, or we want to see if there's a gender difference with this trend. And sometimes past research is contradictory. One study might say that men use their phones more while driving, while others might say that women use their phones more often. So you might want to propose a new study to try to find out which one seems to be more supported by research. Maybe you want to test generalizability. Say these studies have only been done with big city drivers, and you want to see if this applies in rural areas. Or you want to see if this expands to other common driving distractors like the radio. We can also look for alternative explanations. Maybe you think there's a confounding variable that wasn't accounted for, which could explain this behavior. So you replicate the study, controlling for those confounds. So now we are going to talk about where to find past research. One of the best ways is through journal articles, which tend to fall into one of four categories. There are literature reviews, which are a written summary and evaluation of the existing literature on a specific topic. The Psychological Bulletin or the Annual Review of Psychology are both well-known journals that focus on publishing literature reviews. The reviews accumulate the information out there on a subject, summarize it, talk about controversies, and give directions for future research. There are also systematic reviews that focus more specifically on a given topic rather than a broad construct or variable. Meta-analyses are similar, but use an analytical technique that allows researchers to draw statistical conclusions from multiple studies of a single research question. They don't just talk about the research, but attain data from each study and combine it to give an overall picture. Then we have theory articles, which integrate research into a theory. They provide a new framework for studying a phenomenon. Theory articles are not conducting original research, but are looking to add to theory or revise a theory. Sometimes past research is included, kind of like a literature review, but it's there to support a theory. And lastly, what you'll need to look up for our class are empirical articles. Empirical articles are a report of one or more research studies. These articles typically have 5 sections, the same 5 sections you'll be writing for your paper. Empirical articles have an abstract, introduction, methodology, results, discussion, and then a reference section. This is a diagram looking over the parts of an empirical article. We have the abstract, which gives a brief summary of the article. The abstract, while it comes first, is typically written after you're done writing the paper because it includes a brief overview of the results and the discussion. You can't really do that at the beginning of the writing process because you haven't developed those sections yet. Then you have the introduction, which kind of lays out the background. It starts broadly, bringing in past research, and then becomes more specific as you talk about the current study and your specific hypotheses, hence the inverted triangle here. The methodology describes how you're going to run your study. It's going to lay out the participants, materials, and the procedure. In the results, we run the statistics. This section is very objective, and there should not be any interpretation of the results in this section. The interpretation is saved for the discussion. Note that the discussion is kind of the opposite of the introduction, where it goes from specific, recapping the study and providing the results without listing the statistics, to more broad, where more general information is provided. This could be whether or not it supports previous research, the research applications, generalizability, those types of things. Then at the end, you have the references you used in your paper. When we look at exploring past research, finding information on any topic is usually very easy. However, finding scholarly research that applies to a specific topic is not always easy. Any Google search is going to give you a ton of results, but narrowing down the results is really key here, and that's what most people struggle with. Part of your assignment this week is to complete the research path tutorial to help you identify what is good information and how to find that information with the resources provided to ISU students. Most libraries, including the ISU library, pays for research articles so students can get them for free, which means you do not need to pay for research articles while being an ISU student. PsycInfo is a great resource here. This is a digital database of abstracts of articles in psychology, indexed by topic, updated weekly, and maintained by the American Psychological Association. If you go to the ISU library website, select Databases, and select PsycInfo, it will take you there through the ISU system, where you can access these articles without a paywall. And ISU has a specific webpage of library resources for psychology students. This is linked on Canvas. If you click on it, it will bring you to a webpage with links for PsycInfo, specific tests and measures, and contact information for the librarian that specifically helps with psychology resource information. Another resource is Web of Science, which allows us to see what articles cite a specific article. Say you find that one perfect article on PsycInfo or another database, and you want to see what other articles relate to it. You can go to Web of Science, and it might provide replications, follow-up studies, or studies examining similar topics. You can also use Google Scholar. Google Scholar is a much better version than just Google for finding empirical research. Just Google Scholar, and scholar.google.com should be the first thing to pop up. Google Scholar does provide a wide range of results that needs to be narrowed down more so than other tools, but it's still a much better tool than just Google in general. Then we have ResearchGate, which is a professional network for scientists, and you can have discussions with researchers as well as share and find research. If you are having trouble finding a free version of an article, sometimes scientists will share their research on there for free. So this is a graphic from the textbook with information for improving your search. Please pause to read the full list, but I will highlight some of these for you. It can be very helpful to try several different databases because not every paper will be on every database. And then make sure you're trying out different keywords. For example, angry driving and road rage generate two different sets of results, but might serve the same purpose for your topic. And in this general strategy section, it suggests that you don't restrict yourself to only full text articles, but I am going to differ on that for the sake of this class. We are using so few articles compared to published research that in this context, I would like to see you use only full text articles. And I would like to see you use mostly, if not all, empirical articles. When it comes to PsycInfo, play around with the fields. If you type divorce into the title, it will require that that term appears in the title. Also use capitalized words like and, or, and not. These are called Boolean search terms. And so, for example, typing divorce and child requires both to be included, while or allows for either to be included, and not would exclude that term from the search. And then lastly, with Google strategies, it's helpful to have a specific phrase and to also use those Boolean search terms. For this activity, you are going to practice searching. I want you to search inattentional blindness in the general Google page, Google Scholar, PsycInfo, and the general ISU library database. After you try each of these, evaluate. How did the results compare? This might be in number. One platform might give you 27,000 results, which is way too many to sort through, while another might give you 30. You can also evaluate the accuracy. Did it give you what you were looking for? You can also talk about anything else you may have noticed with the results given between platforms. Then, which gave you the easiest to use results? If you were looking for an empirical article on the topic, essentially, which one did you like best? And if you have any questions about the content or the activity, please let me know.